Hello everyone, my name is Ricardo and I'm a wheel addict. I'm going to be one of your instructors on this How to Aggressive Skate Beginners course.
Hello everybody, I'm Bobi Spassov, pro skater from Israel, 32 years old, and I'm here with Ricardo to teach you how to skate.
Let's do this. So the goal with this beginners aggressive skating course is for you guys to understand what the discipline really is and to give you a couple of basics such as the first jumps that you can do, how to deal with your first ramps, and also how to do your first grinds. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Hope you guys ready.
Let's go. Okay, you already know what you're in for, but what skates can you use? Bobby, what skates do you have here?
Yeah, I got the Rossi's Spassov signature skates. It's called the Dogma. And it's basically M12 with skin and a fifth element sole plate.
I also got the Spassov Pro model. This is an older skate, but I think for most of people that are really getting into these, there's a lot of different skates on the market. There are skates with carbon shell, which is the shell is that part of the skate, like the skeleton of the skate that will give the structure. There are soft put skates, maybe not as much as it used to be. And what's the most common is something like these and even like that. That and these have the same shell, this colorful part that you see here. There's something like that underneath those skates. But the most important thing about aggressive skates are the sole plates and the frames. That's what makes the aggressive skates different, right?
Exactly.
What do you have there on your frame? So you have 4 wheels, 2 wheels?
Yeah, I have the anti-rocker setup, which means I have two 60mm wheels in the sides, in the front and the back of the skate, and then I have two small wheels, two small plastic wheels, which are mainly used to grind stuff.
Okay, that's like an anti-rocker setup. Can you show us like this, just to see how it looks? So basically, this is a plastic frame. It's made of plastic. It has 2 screws, one in the back and one in the front that goes straight to the boot. And then it has 2 bigger wheels in front and back and plastic wheels that some of them don't even rotate. It's called anti-rocker. Some people in the past also used the setup they called freestyle, which was no wheels in the middle, right? What I have here, it's completely different because I have 4 wheels the same size and my frame is made of aluminum. If you ask me, is this one better, that one better? Not really, it's a personal taste, but at the end of the day, what you should know is that 4 wheels touching the ground will make it easier for you to turn, way harder to grind. The setup that Bobby has here
is made for grinding. I don't know to say what is better, what is not. This is my personal choice, maybe because 4 wheels takes a little more accuracy when you do grinds, but at the same time it has other benefits. It's more fun to skate, it takes from the impact when you do jumps, easier to maneuver.
Yeah, I think it's better if you have the possibility, try it and choose for yourself. But if you want to grind, this will be easier to grind. This will make you roll faster and will allow you to turn easier. But try it for yourself.
Exactly.
Be good. Topic number 3, protections. Do not feel ashamed of using these. I'm pretty sure the first time you're going to get to a skate park, you will see a lot of people without a helmet, without knee pads, without wrist guards. That doesn't mean that you don't need to use them. Right here we have a pro skater. You probably don't see Bobby use them nowadays, but ask him when he started.
Oh yeah, when I started I definitely used full protections. Hands, elbows, knees, shin guards, and a helmet. At least for the first, I would say, 6 years in skating. I was skating mostly vert ramp in a skate park, and it was mandatory for us to use protection, and I did.
And there's actually some skate parks worldwide that you really need to use it.
Back in the day, it was pretty mandatory to use protection in the skate parks, and yeah, it's very good, especially for beginners when you learn everything and it takes falls and you have protection, you feel safer. Like, I would recommend anybody started skating to put all the protection possible.
And this obviously it's also a question of choice. Some people like, I try to use it a lot still nowadays, even if I've been skating for almost 40 years, I still try to use it. I have a family, so it's also something that plays in my mind. And if someone watching this is in the same situation, there will be probably something that will make people at home feel safer for you. If you have kids, it's something that will make you feel safe. Falls will happen no matter what. We were talking about it before filming this.
Definitely.
Falls are part of this. There's one more protection that we didn't speak about, and some people, sometimes they choose to use. There's crash pads, which is like some shorts that have some foam on the side, because sometimes hitting the hips may happen.
Yeah, it can hurt.
If we're going to be talking about all the protections, what would they be? If we start from down, would be...
I would say shin guards is one of the most important protections when you learn to do grinds, and especially as soon as you get more technical or skating rail, but you can hit your shin at any point doing grinds. So for beginners who's learning to do grinds, I would say shin guards is super important.
I even hit my shin sometimes, like my foot on my shin.
Oh yeah.
Not just on the rail.
When you jump, you try to learn new grabs or spins. Sometimes you hit with your skates, your shin. It's super important and gives a lot of confidence for a new rider. Actually, just to mention, Ilya, who is a pro skater nowadays, he's also skating with shin guards and knee pads regularly. So
and there's a lot more
no
pro
shame.
skaters out there. Especially if you go to competitions, most of the stuff that people would see in competitions, a lot of those people that skate, especially in bigger ramps, it's a must.
Yeah, they skate with knee pads and shin guards. It's no shame for sure.
It's a must.
Yeah, also we got the knee pads. Knee pads, like obviously it's protecting the knees. It's also very, very good for skate park skating. It gives you the ability to fall on your knees. Every time you miss a trick or something went wrong and you usually fall forward in skating, or this what we want to do is fall forward, you can go full in on your knees and your hands when you have protection.
Very important, not trying to take from the knee pads, but also very important to not completely depend on the knee pads. Important to use them for certain falls, but being 100% depending on the knee pads, it's important to know that sometimes they move.
Yeah,
and that can create sometimes a bigger problem. It did happen to me in the past, in the time that I used to use knee pads all the time and focusing on falling every single time on my knees. So we don't need to fall just because we have protections. It's good to know in case it happens, they are there.
Yeah.
Now, the neck protection, if we're gonna go up from here, it's, as I was saying, the crash pads. The crash pads, usually it's some shorts, some boxer shorts that you can use that have some hard foam on the side. There's different ones, and over the past couple of years, they've becoming slimmer and slimmer and slimmer, meaning that you don't really see through people's clothing that they are using it. But what they do is, in case you hit your hips, there's a little bit of a protection here. And some of them even have protection for the coccyx, which is the last bone that we have on our spine. And that's usually a very painful fall that we can have. So having something like that can help.
Oh yeah.
Coming up, what do we have?
We have the wrist guards. Wrist guards is super important both for falls. Like I said, in the knee pads, you use both your knees and your hands pretty much for every fall. When you are actually falling, like, okay, we try to avoid it, but when you're just find yourself on the ground, usually the hands and the knees come first. So when you have protection, it's way less likely for you to break your hand. What I came to understand teaching rollerblading for some time, most people, when they break their hand, when it happens, usually is where they fall backwards.
Yes.
And the wrist guards could prevent this from happening.
So the wrist guards will be very important because they will help you with the front falls, like falling forward and falling backwards. And then also falling backwards, elbows. Not everyone is able to prevent the elbows from the shock, even if it's possible. It's not one of those protections that everyone uses, but a lot of people, especially when they skate bigger ramps, it can happen. Either forward or backwards, hitting your elbows can happen. So using elbow pads are also an important one. The helmet we already spoke, and if you could choose just one, I would say helmet is, well, this can save your life more than anything else.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's it about protections. I hope you learned something now. Bobby, where can we use our aggressive skates?
I mean, as you probably know by now, aggressive skates is mainly used in the skate parks and in the streets.
Yes, and the truth is, if we think of what the skate parks really is, the skate parks are man trying to reproduce what already happens in the streets. Like the reason why they started the vert ramps, it's to reproduce the pools that used to be in California. The rails that you have in the skate park, it's obviously, I would say, even to prepare people to be able to hit the street rails or even the little ledges. There's other things that you can have. Some people may not have a skate park. They may not have like a place in their streets that they can just go and start grinding, especially when they're beginners. But there's things that they can do. They can do P-rails, like those little play rails that you can learn. They can do little curb boxes. There's a lot of obstacles out there that you can start. You can even make like a little kicker. If you don't have the DIY skills to do something, all you need is a piece of wood, a piece of metal in the beginning, just so that your skates don't get stuck when you go up and jump. So I would say skate parks and street and everything in between.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
That's it.
I mean, I would say that the skate parks is some kind of, it's like a football field for extreme sports or a playground for extreme sports, and it's made to be skated, so get out there.
Important, do not feel afraid to go to a skate park. You may feel shy the first time that you go to the skate park, seeing people skating really good, seeing people going in all directions. Very important if you're going to be talking about how to use a skate park for the first time. There's some etiquette that people need to learn. And one of the first things that you need to learn, that you need to do in a skate park, is to never ever walk the park without looking through the park.
Oh yeah.
Never sit in the park without looking. And I would say the most important is before you even go on any ramp, just sit outside and look to what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, it's super important to observe the movement of a skate park. It's kind of like a busy road or something. You can see like the direction that most of the people skate, or difference between different sports like scooters or skateboarders. Everybody kind of have their own different paths. It's super important that as a skater, as a pro skater as well, I do this, I observe, I look always left, right, forward and backwards. I understand the movement that is happening in the skate park and I find my lane within that movement. If I'm not looking, it's very likely that I'm gonna hit somebody or somebody's gonna hit me, especially with young kids, or if you're a young kid. Yeah, so it's very important for us to make sure we understand the movement of the skate park, look around at all time and be aware of what's happening.
Yes, there's no traffic lights in the skate park, but you do not want to go when everyone else is going in front of you. That's kind of like the, the red light. But also something that you should know is usually in the skate park, people tend to understand each other. So it's like, if I'm gonna go once, I don't stop and go again without the other guy going. So it's kind of like, wait for each person to go and then you go for your own. Sometimes it may be a bit annoying that you need to wait, but this is what it is. It's living in...
Yeah, make sure to have good communication with other participants in the skate park. It's super important, and most likely these people will be very welcoming, and just talk to them.
You're making a new friend that makes the same sport as you. Okay, now let's stop with the theory and let's go to the more practical part of things. Basic position. There's a basic position in skating that we don't usually speak about it, but there's a way that we need to be in our skates in order to be in full control. Imagine if you don't bend your knees at all, imagine how stiff you would be at skating. So in that basic position, usually I would say the most important thing, starting from the bottom, is to actually fill the front of your skates with your shins. These would be the most basic thing when you started skating, and if there's like angle changes, like when you go up the ramps and down ramps and when you land something, this is going to be extremely important, because if you don't do these, you're going to do that. And that's when the problem starts. That's when you're going to fall backwards, and that's when you're going to need all the protections. What else do you think is important other than the shins against?
Okay, so this is an aggressive beginner tutorial, so I assume that people who watch this already know how to skate, and if you don't, I suggest that first thing you want to learn is the basic of skating. Now there's tutorials for that. Ricardo made quite a few of them. We want to suggest that the people who start aggressive skating, they're already been training or feel kind of well comfortable on skates, because aggressive skates are not necessarily made for long runs or for learning how to skate. You can do that but
Stop at the pharmacy and buy something for the blisters, because if you're thinking of doing a marathon with these,
oh yeah, no way. So I would say that leaning forward is the most important part. Just like you said, leaning on your skis, using your hips. Your hips is a very important part of skating. Just like in squats, when your movement coming from the bum and you sit down, you take your back a little bit forward. It stays straight, but you take it a little bit forward. That's the most basic position you want to be in when you're skating most of the time.
if I would go on a more theoretical part, I would say kind of like try to get your knees above your toes, something like that. And then if you want to bring your shoulders in the same direction, you're gonna bring your waist back, something like this. So you keep your center of gravity lower. Is that it?
It's better control, and it's also nicer to fall when you're lower and closer to the ground because the impact is less hard.
Of course. Yeah, it's very important. Yeah, because in case you fall from here, it's obviously completely different from here. Also, being here, in case you lock your joints, like, and you can't do anything, you want to be nice and flexible and ready. Basically, you want to be ready. That's what the basic position should be. Get ready for action. That's it. Now we're going to start approaching our first ramp. It's very important for us to understand about skating. When I'm skating in a flat surface, I'm going completely perpendicular to the floor, meaning that my head is on top of my feet. When I'm going up a ramp, independently of the direction of the ramp, I always need to stay perpendicular to the surface where I'm going. So if I'm going flat, I stay like this. If the ramp goes a bit high, I need to put my head a bit like this. This is a flat bank. What if we have like a round ramp like we have there? Well, then I need to progressively adapt to the transition. This is going to be extremely important. So if I'm going to go up a ramp without bringing my head backwards to adjust, what's going to happen is I'm going to smash against the ramp. So it's extremely important that I adjust to the transition when I'm going. If it's a flat bank, just like a little flat bank, I need to adjust at the beginning and then just kind of like keep that position. And when I go down again, I need to adjust it again. This is extremely important as an approach to a ramp. Of course, if the ramp is very curved, very flat, you need to do this adjustment really fast. If it's a very long ramp, you need to do this adjustment very slow. I would say this is the most important thing in terms of approaching
a ramp. All right.
Okay, Bobby, so now these people watching these, they want to learn how to go down a ramp. What would you say that is the most important thing?
Yeah, I will suggest to start with a bank. A bank is the easiest ramp to start. The smaller, the better. There's no shame of starting with the smallest thing you could find. I would really suggest to remember that when you go down a ramp from the first time, most likely you will feel some kind of energy pushing you backwards, like you want to fall backwards. So what we want to do is, just like we learned, use our knees to bend forward, knees over toes, and then what I also suggest is to use our hands and pretend like we're pushing something, whether it's a wall or somebody. If there is somebody who can help you, it's even better. He brings his hands forward and you just push his hands. If you're gonna keep pushing the whole time, literally pushing, you're probably not gonna fall backwards at the first drop into a bank.
Yeah, and you people would be rolling up and then adjust to that. Is that what you're saying? So like imagine if I would be coming here and then just lean forward and kind of like pushing from the top, or just stay on top and just...
No, yeah, you need to take a little speed to kind of go into the bank. It's better for the first time. And as soon as you hit the down part, just remember to keep your position, keep your muscle tight, and push forward. You're gonna feel a little bit of balancing happening, especially the first time, and your brain and body will adapt to that feeling, but you have to go through that feeling.
Very important. Try to avoid at any cost feeling all your weight on the back wheels. If you got all your weight on the back or on the front wheels, it's not good.
Yeah.
You want to kind of like balance the weight in between the front and the back wheels. That means that you are in perfect balance. This would be your first drop in ramps, but we know that most people watching these, they actually want to start going down ramps. For people to be able to do that, they're gonna need to learn how to put the feet on top. A very common mistake that people do when they start wanting to go down ramps is they put one foot, and when they put one foot, they don't know what to do. So they would need to come as close as they can to the coping or to the corner of the ramp, put one foot, create a T with the other foot. And then before moving the foot in the back, I'm going to put all my weight on the other one. I can put my hands, as you were saying, like if I'm pushing someone, and then I put here, and then I push this person. This is this is very important, because if you put one foot first, here you won't feel that much of a difference. But when people go down something like that, which we're going to do next, what happens is that when they put from here to here, sometimes they put their feet too further. And because it's a ramp that it's adjusting, like the ramp is not always the same angle, sometimes you land in the beginning, sometimes you land down. And when you land down, then
it can be dangerous,
yes.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so as Ricardo suggested, we start sideways, 90 degrees to the ramp, go as close as possible and take our time. There's no need to rush. Then we can turn one foot on the coping and still kind of lean backwards. This could be a little scary moment first time when a person comes to the edge of the ramp. So it's very important we kind of lean back and we take our time. If we need to go back again, take another step, try it again, no rushing. When we are at this moment and we feel comfortable and our feet is pretty close together, this is the moment we can come to a decision to drop in. Assuming we already dropped in some banks or maybe a little ramp, because this ramp is kind of big for the first drop in. So we start with the most little ramp we could find. And then when we are here, we can slowly bring the next leg together. Now, I'm right in the center. I'm leaning a little bit backwards and I'm getting ready to lean forward, because when I lean forward, I'm basically already dropping in. So like we said, knees over toes.
Easy. Keep watching this, and you're going to learn how to do that.
First try.
You know how to approach the ramp. You know how to drop the ramp. But to use the ramp fully, you need to learn how to turn on it. We know that when we go up, we bring the chest up. When we go down, we bring the chest down. Now, we combine them. How do you do it?
So I would suggest with some ramps, before you drop in from the top, especially with big ramps, we want to learn how to come from the bottom of the ramp. So for this, we need to learn how to do a 180 or just turn inside that obstacle. So the first thing we want to learn is do it on the floor. We want to learn how to jump and do a 180. For example,
very important. If someone can do these, it's going to help you a lot, because when you do the 180 on the ramp, you don't even need to spin that much, right? It's like what people do on the ramp most of the times when they do a progression. It's going to be so minimal. Right now it's spinned 180 degrees. And as weird as it may seem, when you're learning to use a ramp, sometimes with a 10 or with a 15 or even a 20 degrees, you can be learning it, because then, of course, people do the whole progression thing.
Yeah, you don't start the first time with the full 180. That's what the ramp gives you, the ability to kind of turn little less degrees and still stay in the ramp.
Yes. So basically, you don't need to do the full 180, as Bobby was saying. In fact, if you have like a wider ramp, it's going to actually be very beneficial. So I'm going to just show you an example now. If I have a ramp like this, I don't want to go here and come back here on the first time. So on the first time, I actually want to enter the ramp on one side and go out on the other side. So all I need to do is actually start by doing this. If you start by doing this, just enter one side, move your feet. Ideally, you don't want to move feet one at a time. This was just a progression. What you want to do is you either don't move them at all, but you need to have some control in carving. That would be this. But if you're still not there yet, you can do a little jump. And by doing that little jump, that's what I was saying. You can maybe do that little jump just with 10 or 15 degrees. Something like, this is sometimes enough. Now, when you start getting used, then you're going to start doing something like you were doing. You're going to close more and more and more, and it's going to be closer to the final movement. Yeah, up until do the final one that you actually go straight. The important thing here is to never forget that you need to adjust to the ramp. Now, by adjusting to the ramp, you can also get some speed on this ramp. And that's it. Now you know how to 180. On the next chapter, we're going to teach you how to get speed. Okay, so you now have a little bit more skill in terms of ramps. But you feel like, why don't you get speed? You do one trick and you lose the speed. There's something that you can do. What is it?
Pumping.
How do people do it?
Let's learn.
Pumping, the act of pumping a ramp, what you need, it's kind of like, you remember as a kid when you first learned how to go on a swing? Basically what you're trying to do is, you're kind of trying to fill every single space of the ramp. What I usually tell people is, the best way to start is by not keeping their feet together. It's important, it's easier, in fact, for me to go up, forward, down, backwards. I can start low. I don't need to go to like a very tall ramp. And I kind of feel easier if I do it on a half pipe, because I can feel like if I'm doing something, I can see it on each side. If I go higher or if I go higher on that side, I can feel what I'm doing. For me, what I try to do is to never keep my feet one on the side of the other. I try to keep my feet a little bit one in front of the other. And then when I go up and go down, I push with the front foot against the ramp. When I go backwards, I push with the back foot against the ramp. The way that I visualize it is I try to put as much pressure against the ramp as I can. Kind of like if I'm trying to fill every little hole that could be on that ramp, I want to fill it with my feet. So let me show you here. Basically, if I want to put one foot in front, I'm going to try to keep the exact same foot in front every time. It will be something like this, and then push down on that foot. When I go backwards, I push down on that foot. I know already that I need to adjust to the transition. If I go up, I need to lean my chest a bit backwards. If I go backwards, I need to lean my chest a little bit forward. So now, the higher I go, the more I'm going to be able to push. Also, by putting my foot a little bit in front, that's not how you're going to do it when you're more advanced in skating, but it's a trick that you are doing right now in order to have a bigger wheelbase to get a little bit more balance. So I'm going to try to get a little bit more speed to start, and I'm going to do this. Pushing my foot down there and my back foot down there wasn't enough. I had to also use my knees a lot. And again, my knees, what they were doing was helping me push against the ramp. So a very basic exercise that you can start by doing is when you go up, you push against the ramp. You push against the ramp. You push against the ramp. You always want to feel like you're trying to dig into the ramp, trying to fill every little hole that the ramp could have. Hopefully they don't.
I think like the best way to know if you do this exercise good is if you start super slow and you actually gain speed. When you start gaining speed, when you're pumping, you know you're doing the pumping probably right. So we suggest that you have a good fakie skating on a flat ground.
Fakie meaning backwards.
Backwards, exactly, before you start the pumping. So let me just show you how we can pump super slowly and gain speed.
Easy peasy. Now, what if you want to mix these with what you did before? You want to do a 180 and get some more speed. Well, it's the exact same. You need to wait for getting to the highest point on the ramp. When you are at the highest point, and you turn. That's it. Want to show us?
So yeah, we can even kind of mix the movement for the fun of it. We can start with
Half cab. Half cab. Yeah. So basically, independently, if you're going to turn forwards, backwards, whatever you do, even a 360 like Bobi did, which we're not advising you to do it at first up until you get the basics on, the most important thing is to understand if you want to turn in a ramp and get speed, you do it when you are at your highest point, and then you feel the ramp. Here, now, if it's a vert ramp or if it's a half pipe, pump on one side and get immediately ready for the other side. And especially the higher you go, the less time you're going to have in between one ramp and the other. It's going to be faster.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, people are getting ready to learn something else. Okay, now that you know how to use ramps, we can use them for something else other than just cruising. We can also use the ramps for jumping. So how do we jump? Well, jumping is taking your feet away from the floor. And to do that, what I need to do is I need to compress. I need to go low, and then I just explode. And when I explode, I should actually leave my feet from the floor, but I should actually be really low. Check this. What do I do in order to go higher? Well, to go higher, after decompressing or after exploding, I need to bring my knees up again. So you go low, and then, exactly. And then there is the landing. The landing, we should actually land with both feet at the same time and then go back to the basic position where shins go against the front of the skate, bend your knees, bring your shoulders forward and your hips back, and that's about it. Can you do it again? Boom. That's it. That's how you jump. Now you can do the jumps on every ramp. You can do it over obstacles. If you want to do it on the ramp, usually you want to do it at the end of the ramp.
It's also super important when you land after a jump to remember to bend back your knees. So the impact that you take will go slowly all over your body. So I'm just gonna try and show it. I'm not jumping, landing, and then landing forward. That's like, I literally felt that here, even though it's the smallest of jumps. So we're gonna try to bend slowly and take the impact slowly.
Yes, the shock absorption is extremely important when jumping. So it's basically, we need to exaggerate on that basic position. Again, knees forward, shoulders forward, hips back. We exaggerate on that in order to absorb the shock. Now, if you're gonna do it on the ramp, we shouldn't be doing it in the middle of the ramp, right? We should do it at the end of the ramp.
Yeah, if you wanna fly out, exactly.
And that is it. That can be used to go up a ramp, down a ramp, over a rail. Can be used for several things. Into a ramp. Now you know how to jump. The next progression, I would say, would be doing a grab. A grab is basically you using one of your hands to grab your skate. Will not just give you a little bit more control, but there's something else, right?
Yeah, some pepper to it.
With some extra style points.
Yeah, some extra style points, some pepper. With some tricks, it actually helps if you want to do... Like, I could say, personally, sometimes if I do, let's say, a 360 in a certain gap, it could be a pretty big gap. Sometimes grabbing it really helps me to land that trick rather than keeping it all over the place, because it ties you into a certain position, and sometimes that could be very helpful.
Okay, yeah, it kind of gives you some guidance in the air. So if you want to do it, we're going to teach you how to do two tricks. What Bob is doing right here, that's the mute grab. And there's another one called the safety grab. Just like that. For you to be able to do it, what you need to know is you need to bring your knees up a little bit. It doesn't need to be full onto your chest, but you bring your knees up a little bit, and then with your feet together, they both go a little bit to the side. Something like this, or like this. This is the safety, when you grab on the side. The mute is when your hand goes over both skates and grab the lower one. Very important. We are doing it here sitting down just to show you the movement. But when you do it, it's extremely important that your head stays on top of the movement. If you're going to be doing it like this, it's 100% guaranteed that you're gonna fall backwards.
Or
if you're gonna do it like that, you're gonna do a backflip. But we're not teaching you how to do backflips.
Yeah, one little point is I want to suggest is that your back is kind of stays straight and over the legs. If you try to use your back too much to grab your feet, you're probably doing it wrong from the hip side of things. Again, if you go back, you're probably gonna fall backwards. So what we want is that the hips will come as up and as right as possible, so we don't use our back to bend forward too much. So I'm just gonna show this now with jumping. So even on the floor, which is sometimes harder than doing it out of a ramp because we have less time to grab our trick, but I'm still gonna try and show you what I mean by not bending your back too much. I'm just gonna try and jump from the floor and grab it without using my upper body that much, just to so we can understand what I'm talking about. So we bend, we take a big jump, legs sideways, grabbing and bending back down.
It's usually easier. What Bobby is doing is extremely hard because he's doing it on flat. So usually if you do it down from a gap, or if you use a ramp to do it to the side, or up a ramp is usually a million times easier because you have more time to do it, more space in the air, more momentum. If you want to practice it the hardest way so that you can then take it to the next level, putting it out of tricks and putting it...
And it's going to be easier when you actually trying it on ramps and in real spots.
As a beginner, I used to do it in the water when I used to go to the beach.
Yeah.
I used to try to learn the movement, all the movements in the water, try to do it, so then when I would put my skates on, like the muscle memory was already there somehow.
I mean, generally speaking, it's a very important point. I personally practiced a lot of tricks just with shoes, just on the floor, on the trampoline, whatever, just practicing 360s with shoes. I literally even did like, and I'm not kidding, I used to jump 540s and do stalls with shoes for hours, and then it was super practical afterwards in skating. So it's just a side tip for the whole thing. So again, I'm gonna try and show the safety grab out of a ramp, in the floor, out of a bank, into a ramp. Let's go.
Now, in the last chapter, people might be wondering, how did he came down backwards? Well, what it did is just like a 180 on the floor, but because there was a ramp, there was no spin. But on the floor, people can do 180s too, right? How do people do 180s? Not like the little 180 that they learned before to turn in a ramp, but if they want to do a bigger 180, what's important if they want to land backwards on the floor?
Oh yeah, it's important that you land with your stronger foot on front, or actually the way you skate fakie. I cannot say right now right, left, each his own how he skates fakie. It's important that you land with the 2 feet separate and that you, just like we said, bend forward so you will take all the impact. Actually, to a certain degree in rollerblading, landing backwards is maybe easier or nicer. We would love to land backwards in most occasions, right?
Yeah, it's usually it helps landing for impact absorption, but also not just that. What I wanted really to focus here is actually how important it is. For some people, it's actually easier to do a 180 than jumping forward, not just because of the absorption, but also because the way they're visualizing the trick. Usually when I do a 180, I need to land looking over the shoulder. This is going to be extremely important. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Some people, if you're going to do it like this is dangerous. You're going to go blind. So you need to do it. As Bobby was saying, there's one foot that stays in front, the other one that stays in the back. Usually you always want to be looking over the shoulder of the foot that stays in the back. So this is extremely important for you to keep your balance. If I'm going to be doing this, I have zero control. So it's extremely important that I spin and then I land with looking over the shoulder of the foot that it's going leading.
So basically there is 4 ways to do the 180 kind of correctly. One is turning left or turning right and looking left over the shoulder and right over the shoulder and changing your feet position. The other way is to turn and let your head keep the turn until you're in your basic fakie position. So I will just show the example.
This is the simple one that we were talking about, where it kind of feels like you don't spin the full thing, almost.
And we can do it the same on the other side.
It's not mandatory that you can do all of them. Usually, when you're learning, there's one of these that will be easier for you.
Yeah, it's super great if in the learning process, you will already let yourself play with the idea of doing both 180s, looking over both shoulders. Just play with the idea. You will find out which one is your best one and you will go with that, but
it's good to find where you can actually go in the future, because this is going to open a lot of possibilities in the future.
Yeah, one of the things that I didn't practice enough, unfortunately, and I practice today when I'm 32, is skating fakie
backwards
switch.
Yeah. With the other foot leading. As I was telling you, a lot of people do it like this, but doing it like this, for me, would be the switch way or the opposite way. It plays completely with my control.
Super hard. Yeah. It's super hard. So I suggest practice it straight from the beginning. So another way to do 180, just in case you don't feel comfortable looking at the switch shoulder, is keep your head turned.
This is very important to have in mind when you do something like this. There will be a blind moment in your movement, because when you do it the previous way that we were talking about, you can always be watching the action. This way, you kind of feel like you spin more, even if you don't spin more, but having that little blind moment may make it harder for you or easier. It really depends on the skater too.
Yeah, for sure. If I jump a big gap, because this is my normal 180 and my normal landing, I would probably take the option to go with the full rotation of the hand. There will be a blind spot there, but it will be better for my overall control, assuming it's a big spot.
Okay, and now we're gonna start with the grinds, which is what a lot of people associate as the most important tricks in aggressive skating. I don't fully agree with that, but I do see a lot of people doing grinds, including myself and you. What would you say is the first grind that people should learn?
I would suggest to start with a sole grind. I guess it can change from a person to a person, but this is just my take of things. When I teach the kids, I start with a sole grind. So assuming we figuring which leg is our stronger one and which leg we want to be on the sole plate side. So sole plate side is this one. Now here we're kind of like stepping into a Makio. One thing we could practice is just this step in movement. So when we're feeling comfortable being here, look how my knee is bending. Again, I'm using my hip to sit down a little bit and I bring the other foot up. Now here, I can find some balance. Maybe the first time you will do it, you will not be ready to find any balance. What is important is that the knee is going deep, because if it will keep straight, we will slip off the rail. Just like that.
I think it's also very important for people to know, in case they don't have a P-rail like these, something like this would be enough. Just a little piece of a sidewalk or a step. These would be enough for them to just try it for the first time, right?
In a way, it's even easier on a ledge, on like a square obstacle. But here we're gonna use the P-rail, assuming you have a rail or a P-rail next by, or a square, is the same idea. We put the feet, one foot, our strong one, then we put the second one, and we practice a little bit of balancing. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to be on it for an hour to go to the next step. It's just getting the feeling of the stance of this grind. It's true about every other grind position as well. Just stepping up to it and feeling the balance. The next thing we want to do, in my opinion, is to step up into a grind. So that means we do the same thing, exactly the same thing. 1, 2, but with a little bit of speed. We're gonna start with skating slow and just putting the Makio on the rail, not bringing the other foot up yet. What we want to practice first is locking the Makio a few times or a lot of times until we feel comfortable with that before we bring the other leg and balancing. I'm gonna show you a little bit how to do it. So now when we feel comfortable with just putting one foot, we can start putting the other foot. If you have even a longer obstacle, it will be nicer, but again, it works on everything, on curb, on a box, on a P-rail.
Very important about the stance of this grind is to try to avoid keeping your feet together. Usually having a bit of a bigger, a wider stance will help you. Something that in my opinion also makes a difference is, as Bobby was saying, you want to lean the sole or the Makio foot to the side. Something that gives me a little bit of extra balance for me and gives me a bit more control in the sole grind is to keep my knees together. I think of keeping my knees together, and this is going to help me. Instead of doing it like this, also thinking about where I leave my weight on my foot is also very important. I always try to not put all my weight on the front of the foot or on the back. I feel like I need to balance the weight that I have on my back foot, on the sole foot the most, more than the front one. Kind of feel like I need to put the front foot there, but I still want to pressure with my heel against the rail so that I feel the slide. If I just go forward, this is going to happen, and this is dangerous. So I want to put my knees together and still feel a bit of pressure with my heel against the rail so that it slides. That's it. This is an amazing exercise for you to actually start doing longer rails. But from stepping into it, how do you go into jumping? How do you start doing that grind?
So yeah, after we practice for a while, let's say we are already in control of skating to the obstacle, stepping up to it, it's time to start practicing jumping. Now, one of the things I would suggest to start with is actually square obstacle and try to do it with stalls. This is a pretty high one. We suggest to start with a low one, but I will try and show you. We take little speed and we try to jump both feet together, and we try to jump onto the obstacle 2 feet together and making sure that our shoulders is directed with the obstacle, which means we're looking at our front foot. We're not looking like this at both feet, because that will not give us the position, the stance we want. So we will look on the front foot, and then our shoulders will aim forward towards where we want to go. That's the way to balance for a long time over a grind.
A good way to see that it's not how you're going to do your grind in the future, but having your arms opened may help you to see this. If you open your arms and if you see them both here, that means that you're doing wrong. If you open your arms and you can feel like your chest is facing forward, that you're on the right path.
Let's show some example. I skate relatively slow to the obstacle, and I try to position myself already as if I'm grinding. It's good to do some pretending sometimes when you learn something. After I got this perfectly, I can add some speed and angle. If it's a square obstacle like this that doesn't grind, I could wax it a little bit and get ready for learning how to balance on it. What I suggest is, if it's a ramp like this, sometimes adding a little bit of speed will already do the job for grinding something. So I would not rush to use wax, okay? First, adding a little bit of speed will already give me that little grinding moment. Once I'm there, it's just taking it longer, waxing, trying on different obstacles, and we got the sole grind.
Yeah, and then we can do it here. Okay, you've just learned how to sole grind, but there's more grinds out there. Still using the sole of our feet, there's 2 more grinds that we're going to teach you. The first one that we're going to talk in this chapter is the Makio, which is actually something that you already did. The Makio is when you slide only with your sole foot. And something which is very common when you're doing that, it's to step into it. It's not the right way. You shouldn't be doing these once you really do the trick. But at first, if you're gonna step into it, it's perfectly normal. It's important for you to bring your knee to the top of the rail, because if you put your knee straight, check what happens. It's a round rail right now. If you put your knee straight, it's gonna slip out. Just to avoid these, the way for you to be able to do it would be bringing your knee a bit to the top. Now, you already know how to lock. You want to start grinding. Just like with the sole grind, what you're going to need to do is you're going to just increase the speed, get a bit more speed, and do the exact same thing as the stall just to feel the grinding. You can actually even do it without lifting the other foot, just feeling it there.
Yeah, to begin with, I would even suggest not leaving.
Yeah, sometimes what I do is this. Just this. A progression that can also work for some people, not for everyone, would be obviously something like this, where you take your feet a little bit, or the foot that stays on the ground, you can also stay on the front wheel or on the back wheel, just to take a little bit of weight. So something like this. Something like that also takes a little bit of the weight from the foot that it's down, and already can work as a progression. Now, of course, after doing that, what's coming next is going to be the grind. But you can first start by stepping into it, and after getting used to the stepping into the grind, then try to jump into it.
Yeah, I would say stepping into it would be the advised way to do it first. Then when we got the jumps and everything is ready, I think just in general, disassembling every trick and assembling it afterwards will help you progress the right and safe way. So let's do some step up Makios and then jump into it. And because we already learned some grabbing, we can spice it up and do a grab
exactly
Makio.
What I was going to say. Once you get your Makios, you can just grab them Makios. And then there's several grabs that you can do. You can do other runs that come from these, but for now, I would say just a grab Makio. You can now do 2 grinds with your sole plate, using the sole plate of your skate. Usually it's the same foot, but for some people they actually change between grinds that they use the sole plate. The next one is going to be the third and last trick that we're going to talk about, which is done with the sole plate. It's called the Miszou. If on a sole grind, you put the sole foot first and then bring the other foot to the front, the Makio, you keep just the Makio foot. Now there's another trick called the Miszou. And on the Miszou, what you do is you bring the other foot to the back and on top of the rail. By staying on this position, it's going to feel completely different from a sole grind. Also, the weight needs to be distributed differently. But if we start just like we did on the previous 2 tricks, we can start by doing a progression. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to step into the Miszou. We're going to put the Makio foot first, and then we bring the back foot into the rail. We can start by doing it just stepping in the same position as Bobi was doing, just 1, 2. 1, 2. A very, very, very common mistake on this trick is to keep your feet together. Keeping your feet together, once again, is going to reduce your wheelbase, meaning these will be dangerous. Less space in between your feet will make it slide not with as much control as they should. So you want to have a little bit more space between your front and back foot in order to have better balance. Once you got the Miszou like this, just like the previous 2 grinds that you did, you can start by doing the stall with both feet at the same time. Ideally, it makes it easier if you go perpendicular to the rail on this trick. When you do a sole grind, for some people it's easier if they go straight to the rail. On a Miszou, you actually want to go on the same angle as the rail so that you don't need to spin. So even if you just stopped while doing the stall, if you just jump from here to the rail or from here to the square grinding surface as we did before, it's easier if you're in the same angle as the ledge or as the rail.
Generally speaking, that's the right way to do grinds, but sometimes Even just obstacles, they make you come 90 or 45 degrees to the obstacle, and it's also good to learn how to do it in different ways. But generally speaking, coming parallel to the rail is the right way when you're gonna grind whatever it is.
So it would be something like... And once you do that... We teach you 3 basic sole tricks. There's a lot more out there, and there will be an intermediate course where we teach you a lot more variations to do with this trick. But now, let's go to a trick that for a lot of people it's simpler than the sole grind or the trick with the sole foot, but for a lot of other people it's actually harder. It's called the frontside, and it's basically, I would say, the faster grind that we can get with inline skates.
Probably, yeah. It will ride fast if it's the right obstacle, yeah.
Yeah, so basically the front side, think of this. If you do a sole grind, usually you would put the Makio and the other one. On the front side, you would have both feet on top. The biggest problem that we have with the front side is if you're gonna step into a front side, there's a lot of problems that may occur. Back in like the 90s, there was a viral video going within the skating community of someone trying to do a front side and stepping into the front side. And while they try it, the front foot slided. So they just slided completely out and fell on the rail. That can be one of the dangers of the stepping into a front side. Unless, if when you're learning, you go completely perpendicular, 90 degrees to the rail, and you're gonna start by putting one foot and the other. But even doing that, it's not something that you should be doing in order to grind. It's something that you may do at first at the complete basic level just for you to feel how the grind works if you're scared of jumping. But ideally, you should not be stepping into a front side, because the front side is a grind that you should have both your feet outside your hips or even outside your shoulders. And if you step into it, you're putting your foot right below the center of your body.
Yeah, so like we said, we're just doing it sometimes to disassemble and assemble a trick. If we want to step into a front side, I suggest we pick the most rough obstacle we can find that it doesn't grind at all, and then we can try play with the stepping up to it. For example, this wooden, even just the fact that it's uphill, I could put my right foot first towards up the hill, so I know for sure it's not gonna slip off. When I feel like there is a pretty good grip, I can try bring the other one and jump back.
That would be progression number 1. Now from here, you can start feeling the slide. Obviously, on the roughest surface would be harder than would be on a surface which is very, very slippery. It can also be possible to be done on something like this.
Yeah, because it's super low and uphill, it's actually a good obstacle to try and do your first front side. Well, assuming we already know how to jump nicely, maybe we even jump to a sole grind, so we're at this position where jumping into something is not the hardest part. We could come super slow and just...
So what I would do is when I jump, I would try to put my knees closer so that I'm grinding with the inside part, something like... And when I stay on the inside, I'm gonna start feeling it right away. Even if I don't go parallel to the obstacle, even if I go straight to the obstacle, I will feel, because it's down, that it's gonna go, it wants to go somewhere. Obviously, the more I go parallel, or the more I go to something like this rail, the more it's going to slide. Very important about the front side, which is not the same with the sole grind, is that on a sole grind or on a Makio or a Miszou, there's usually no rotation. You just put your feet and there's 0 rotation from one of your feet, right? On the front side, you need to spin 90 degrees. You need to look in the same direction as where you're going. Now, very important, do not let your legs come out of this position. If you're gonna start opening your feet, your front foot can come out, and that can be a very problematic mistake, especially if you're gonna go fast. At first, it's not really a problem. If you do this, it's not ideal, but you wanna stay on top. But once you start getting a bit more speed and being able to do it, Again, don't forget, your feet should be wider than your shoulders or wider than your hips. You want to stay on the inside edge of your skates, put your knees a bit together, and you're going to be looking forward. When you jump, you want to do a little bit of like a 90 degrees.
And yeah, if there is a possibility there's someone next to you in that learning or training session, you could, for the first jump, especially on the front side, you can do it with hands, which will be super helpful.
Something like this. This helps a lot. Now, once you're able to do it with hand assistance, you can try it either with the hand assistance just to lock in and then you take your hands, something like this, just a hand, just here and then I go, or I can go straight to it. If it's a rail, something that may help you is something that lock and come out, something like this. If it's on a rail, this may help you, but if you're trying it on a ledge, this is not a possibility. Very important for you to understand about this front side on a rail or on a ledge is that it is completely different the way that you're going to be sliding. If you're going to be doing a front side on a rail, you want to stay completely on top. While if you're going to be doing it on a ledge, then your front wheels need to be up. Because if you put your front wheels down, they're going to touch the surface and most of the times they're going to stop you. So it's a completely different position. Also, what happens is on a ledge, it's much harder to do a front side as long as it would be on a rail, unless you wax the ledge a lot on top and then the front wheels can touch and you can control your front side. And that's about it for the front side.
Damn, son.
We're coming to an end. There's one more grind that we're going to teach you, and there is the backside. And as the name says, a front side, you're going to approach the rail with the front of your body facing the rail. A backside, it's the exact opposite. So basically, once you are on top of the rail, it's going to feel the exact same, but the approach is different. So if I would compare it to tricks that we already did, I would compare the front side more to the sole grind, where if this would be the rail, this would be the sole, this would be the front side. Now, if I would be doing a backside, I would compare the backside more to a Miszou, where if this would be a Miszou, this would be a backside. So at the end of the day, what happens is, for a lot of people, they do the front side with one foot in front and the backside with the other foot in front. Then there's other people that they would prefer to spin the opposite way in order to grind in the same direction. I'm one of those. I'm always doing my front sides and back sides with my left foot in front.
I do it with the right foot.
Always with the same foot in front.
I mean, unless I'm doing...
Yeah, unless you're doing a switch. Yeah. Here, if you want to do it in the same way that you've been doing until now with all the other grinds, you can also do the progression, but it's a much harder grind for you to do the progression of doing one foot in front and then the other one. This would be a grind that I would tell you, try it once you have the previous four already on lock. And once you have it on lock, all you need to do is actually to come to the side of the rail, and then you jump to the top, you spin 90 degrees, and you're gonna imagine the exact same grind that we did before. So if I'm here, I'm gonna jump, spin 90 degrees, and stay just like I stayed on the front side.
I would say on the personal level, I would practice like a stall backside first, if it's possible. But if you feel like you feel more comfortable on a rail or on a curb object, you can just do it like that. If you have some comfortability in the ramp, I would suggest to do the backside as a stall on the ramp, or even of the edge of a bank. For example, this edge might be too small, but we're gonna try.
After doing it on the ramp, you can also do it on a little curb or on a little rail.
Yeah, basically you find a little edge at the end of a ramp, whether it's the coping or even just a bank, depends what situation you are like. What do you feel is your level at the moment? If you just want to practice that 180 movement and getting stuck or being in a stall position, you can start with a little bank, with a nice edge. You can go kind of slow, do the 180, get stuck in the middle, go back down, then take it to the coping, and from there you can take it to the rail. Unless you, I don't know, maybe you don't have any ramps around and you only have that P-rail or that ledge next to you, so you can practice that directly grinding into an obstacle.
Okay, so you would prefer maybe to do a backside first on the coping than doing it on a P-rail?
Personally, yeah. Okay. I would say like...
This is very good because at the end of the day, the two of us are skaters for very long, and in this topic, we both have different approaches. For me, I feel more comfortable with doing this thing on a P-rail without going forward. Like if I go forward from here to do it, I need to do a full 180 or even on the coping.
I would say that maybe at this point, after you're already doing some grinds and you already practice some ramp, you probably could tell for yourself where do you feel more comfortable trying it for the first time. I would be the kind of person that would love to do it on a ramp first, like on a coping table, and Lino here would probably use a P-rail.
So I have a challenge for you to finish this course. What about doing a backside there and the backside here? Right away.
This is all switch. I'll do the other way around.
We leave that for the advanced level.
Oh, yeah.
And that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed this beginner's aggressive skating course. Me and Bobby are already working on a intermediate, advanced, and who knows, maybe pro?
Maybe.
That is it. Now, if you enjoyed this one, maybe you can follow Bobby and follow what I do on our social media, because we do very regular updates there on Bobi Spassov on Instagram and Ricardo Lino on Instagram, and from there you can see the handles for all the rest of our social media. So thanks for watching and see you on the next one.